I was very afraid. I had this thing where I was like, I promise I'm not crazy. I promise I'm not crazy. And I felt very guarded to use my abilities.
Welcome to Supernormalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the seemingly supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore less uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of life experience. My treasured listeners, if you have a life story or healing modality or unique knowledge that you'd love to share, reach out to me at Supernormalized, that's Supernormalized with a Z, at proton.me. Let's together embrace acceptance of the supernatural and unusual as what it really is, completely normal. On today's episode of Supernormalized, I'm joined by Cassandra Deann VanCuren. Despite a challenging upbringing, which included religious abuse, Cassandra discovered her true purpose in life. Through her artistic pursuits, she found solace and passion, but also realized the dangers of seeking validation. A spiritual awakening that occurred during a solar eclipse transformed her perspective, and now, as a trained intuitive and certified guide, Cassandra is dedicating her time to inspiring others. With a background in the wedding industry and a love for metaphysics, she offers a unique perspective and aims to help individuals break free from societal conditioning. Join us for an empowering conversation with Cassandra today. Welcome to Supernormalized, Cassandra VanCuren. Now, we interviewed before, but for some reason I didn't press the record button, and that was really embarrassing. Then I didn't even know it was not recording. But this time I can see it's recording. I actually know where to look, and that was a bit silly of me. But we had a good discussion last time. But now we've decided to come back and re-record, and this time it's going to be a bit of a two-way discussion. So I'm interested to see where this goes, Cassandra. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk with you again.
Yeah. So, Cassandra, you had a really rough childhood growing up, and if anything, that would have probably suppressed a lot of your abilities, which were innate from birth. So, what happened for you, and how did that play out?
Yeah, sure. So it was an interesting childhood. I label it as I grew up in a religiously abusive home, to where, we grew up under a fundamentalist Christian, environment. Things were very by the book being the Bible. And we were kind of sheltered from, I guess you could say, the outside world, even our own family members outside of, our home. And it just ended up being this environment where, I was sort of groomed in this way to cater to those around me, my parents, in a way that almost goes beyond the already challenging dynamic of a, high control religious environment. And I honestly lived a life that was kind of full of fear. My mother was very much into deliverance, such as, delivering people from demons. And we heard a whole lot more about the devil than we did God. And so I kind of just was in this environment until I was 18, when my grandfather ended up committing suicide, which my mother said was a result of him not being on fire for God enough. So that allowed the devil a foothold to take his life. That kind of felt like the last straw for me. So I moved out at that point, was in and out of the at first I was very much in the church and trying to just kind of follow suit how I was raised, due to that fear. Eventually, towards my mid 20s, I kind of relaxed a little bit in as far as like attending a location, but still very much lived by this fear until around the age of 40 when I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening during a solar eclipse and kind of got thrown into the oh my gosh, I don't even know how to summarize it. The spiritual, the magical and unexplainable, and aliens and and redefining God. And so yeah, here I am.
Wow. So that was a massive opening for you. You were already quite religious because of your prior religious experiences, even though they were negative in ways. But you did have a big connection to your faith. So this eclipse shook up your faith and allowed you to see more in the world and open to more things. So when that happened to you, what happened? I mean, did you was the eclipse? Were you meditating, or what were you doing to make to be open, or is it just you're walking down a road and bang, I understand everything?
Yeah, yeah. So it's so interesting because I'll try to keep this short. About 5 years prior, I did end up going to see a psychic because I have ever since I was little had nightly visitations. Now, there's a whole, that there's so much I could go into with that. I believe I was visited by more than one particular, energy, I'll call it. But about 5 years prior, I ended up, after years of experiencing this, since as young as I can remember, I actually saw a face of who I was seeing in my bedroom every night. And I looked through all of my family albums and I couldn't find this face. Long story short, I ended up stumbling upon a picture on Facebook from a relative that I don't really keep in contact with, but it was a picture of my grandfather. And so
Mm.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's who I am seeing. And so I went to a psychic. Within 5 minutes, she named him. And it was interesting because after that, I never saw him again. It was just like I ended up talking to my father, who I was in communication with at the time, and found out that my grandfather did actually know me before he died. I was 2 years old when he passed. And so it was interesting because in that moment I did go, but it was like literally the first thing that went wrong in my life afterwards. I was like, oh my God, I'm cursed now. I've opened that foothold to the devil. So that was kind of like that was my one little, maybe, and that I quickly shut the door. So as this eclipse was approaching, I ended up going through this period in my life where there was something so simple and silly. It was, I have worked in the wedding industry and someone gave me, negative feedback. And I had never in the 8 years doing that work received negative feedback. And because I was so insecure and fed off of validation, it was kind of like it shook my world a little bit. So I considered going back to this psychic in this moment. And it was interesting because that day, I was in the car and it was the first, I mean, back then I didn't get podcasts. I didn't know like what the point, I like to watch things. Why would I listen? So I decided to download the Apple app and listen to a podcast about astrology. And so this was like the first time I feel like I kind of sort of opened my mind a little bit to it. And on the way there, I was listening. by the time I got to the psychic, I was doing all the talking, which at that time in my life was very unusual due to the amount of insecurity. And it just was this unusual unfolding that started that day. And I don't even remember what the psychic said. Like I said, I was just kind of like unraveling all the things that I was realizing like instantaneously about my life and about different things. And these were things that weren't really covered in the podcast. It was just like this sudden understanding. And the whole day I just sort of kept down this hole until eventually I told my husband, I said, I get it. Like this is my life. Why didn't I know it sooner? Why didn't I see or understand it? And so it's unusual because it was this feeling that felt like it was beyond just, oh, yeah, this is your astrology. Here, look at it. It's like we've all had moments like this. It just was something so unique. And by the next day, everybody that was around me was like, you are not the same person. You feel different, you speak different, you act like you speak of these things like you've known them forever. And one of the girls that I worked with saw me pretty much every day for 3 years, and she was like kind of like, who are you? And it just kind of exploded from there. Was a very accelerated spiritual awakening journey.
Excellent. Have you looked back on the astrology for that actual day and seen,
Oh, I have.
yeah, what was going
Yeah.
on?
So that's when I realized, first off, that's when I realized it was the solar eclipse.
Yeah.
So in my astrology house, it's in was in Gemini in the ninth house. And so Gemini has this energy of curiosity, communication. Ninth house is about philosophy, deeper understandings, religion, all of these topics, higher education type things, not surface level, is what that ninth house is all about. And so for Gemini, having that open and curious mind, which I never, that was not me. And that's where the eclipse was in that placement. And it just like blew my mind open. All the veils were gone. And I was just suddenly entertaining, all these crazy things. And so, yeah. And
Wow.
also, one more note. In my studies of galactic astrology, which kind of goes into our connection with the stars and other galactic beings, when I pull my chart, like the placements that were significant that day were very significant to my natal chart. So it was like, you can think of it as like a helping friend that's like, okay, Cassandra, it's time to activate, So I think it's so interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this has happened for you and you've had this massive explosion at that time. I mean, thinking about it in other terms of astrology, if somebody had done an election and found that point and then made a talisman at that moment, they would have actually had a talisman that was like nice and opening and information and all sorts of stuff. You became the talisman. You So that's
Oh,
now that influenced your whole life since, right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just so interesting when we sort of have these moments in life, whether it's this or whatever it is, that just really call our attention to this idea that there is something so much more. And I'm curious, do you have a first experience or something that you've had that kind of was like caused you to think, okay, there's more to this reality than what we think?
Okay, so I've had so many.
Yeah.
I can't say
Awesome.
first because like it's been gradual and as time has gone by, different ones have come along and basically been pivot points for extra change. So it's like
Yeah.
every one of them is like an initiation into a greater understanding of the world and a greater understanding of who I am and my relation
Yeah.
to it. And my I've explained this one on my podcast before, but I'll explain it briefly for your listeners too. That when I was really small, I think I was about 4 or 5 years old. As a toddler, I would walk across the road and into the forest, and I started doing this because I was called there. And when I went there, there was these beings which were in the forest that I'd sit with, and they taught me how to meditate.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and so when that happened, I felt a greater connection to everything, and that was one of my key points in personal growth as a very small child. But that happened to me, and I've had many since. So, but that's one of my first ones.
Wow. At such a young age, that is incredible.
Yeah, I think it was just a
Yeah.
part of my astrology for that sort of stuff to happen too. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Mm. So you've had this experience happen to you, and it's turned you into a bit of an alchemical vessel. So, what's your view on yourself when it comes to this greater understanding of yourself? I mean, how did that play out in your life thereafter?
Yeah. So the first thing was, the first thing that had to take place was, well, I had to kind of deconstruct what my personal opinions were about the things I grew up with as far as it relates to religion. And then the next thing was kind of getting to know myself and learning that it was safe, okay, for me to express myself, be myself. I mean, I wanted to just kind of be a wallflower. I wanted to disappear. I was not outspoken, and quite opposite of what I embody now to this day. And so, the more I allowed that feeling, I felt safe in that expression. And there were so many helpful pieces along the way to bring me there. But once I did that, I really started to understand, why my soul is here, like why I wanted to be here, what I wanted to experience. And, a lot of it has to do, I think, not only myself, but all of us, is, the ability to sort of connect with the things we feel excited or drawn to in life. And so that's what I did. I, sort of followed the breadcrumbs wherever they led. And it's taken me on a fun journey of learning all sorts of things.
What have you learned?
Yeah, yeah. So the first was, of course, astrology. I kind of like ran with that first thing that kind of sparked my interest. That led me to human design, which I am a certified human design reader. And just putting it lightly in context for your listeners, if they're not familiar with human design, it's basically a modality that uses astrology, the ancient I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, Kabbalah tree of life, and it kind of adds to that quantum physics and circuitry and kind of just wraps them all up into this chart that is called your body graph. And it's basically a way to read your light signature, your expression. You could say something similar to that of a natal chart in astrology, but with a lot of more layers. And that made me fall in love with the I Ching. So I ended up discovering Gene Keys, which is an extension off of human design that dives in deeper to that particular element of the I Ching. And it was introduced by Richard Rudd. And so I became certified as a guide there. And now I'm like this close, so close, almost there. Maybe a couple weeks or so to be certified in galactic astrology. So yeah, those
Wow, that's exciting.
it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I know about the gene keys. My wife's right into it, and she's shown me some
Oh,
interesting information through that, and I find that very, very curious. And but the thing is, I wanted to ask you more about was your understanding, because I mean, you're so close to the end. What is galactic astrology?
oh gosh, it's been the missing piece of all of my journeys I've been on. It just kind of synchronizes everything together so beautifully. So now I believe that, we are fragmentations of an original source energy. And part of that process means that, this fragmentation happened well before Earth was ever into the picture. So I believe that our origins actually come from outside of what we would resonate as here on Earth. And so, what a galactic astrology chart is, it's by studying the placements in your charts connected to fixed stars. Depending on what the aspects are, it notates places where you might have been connected with. You may have incarnated. You may have had your soul origins in one of these particular locations. And this program, this modality, was introduced by Julia Blaz, who is an incredible recognized astrologer, who also is a QHHT practitioner. I'm not sure if you
I don't know
are
what that is.
familiar. Yeah, so it's a quantum hypnosis technique of hypnosis, like past regression. And so, through her studies of people sharing under hypnosis these experiences they've had, I'm a big Dolores Cannon fan. So the method taught is from Dolores Cannon. So it's this collection of experiences that, she started to notice, oh my gosh, there's these synchronicities of my clients, saying they're experiencing these things, this star species. And here the astrology is matching up to these particular stars. And so
Wow.
she kind of ran with it, and it has been incredibly effective. And I mean, even for my own journey of unlocking so much about myself, including putting pieces together to realize that I have experienced abduction 3 different times in my life that deeply resonate, and that's kind of a whole nother rabbit hole. But yeah, it's very revealing information.
Wow. Well, it sounds mind blowing. I mean, the way that she's put it together by interviewing people that are contactees almost, and then putting together information of their experiences, and then like basically reverse engineering that into astrology. That's really wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the site is offhand, because it was a recent announcement in our group, but she recently was recognized in some very significant, that's like the Harvard of astrology, big organization. She just was like asked to be a part of their whole program. But I don't know, it's just, I love, she's so it's always a pleasure to hear her share her wisdom, and I feel so honored to be learning as well, and being able to share that gift as well with others.
Right, right. And so when you have a galactic astrology reading,
Mhm.
what are the aspects that you can tell from that, and what benefits can people get from hearing about their galactic astrology?
Yeah, absolutely. So, basically, what you're doing is, it's a very um multi-step process, as we're trained, because not only are we reading the actual the astrology, so we have to be, versed in advanced astrology. Then there's the layer of being educated on the star placements, then understanding the actual species of the different star races. And then on top of that, we're trained in reading the Akashic records. So when we're doing a reading, it is a lengthy process to where we're reading both the astrology, the Akashic records, and the fixed star placements. Now, and the reason why this is important is the more charts I'm reading and the more I'm noticing from stories of others, is what we're experiencing this life is not just necessarily this life. What we are playing out often rings like a bell through multiple different incarnations. And what's interesting is, especially when we're looking at Earth's history here, we collectively are playing out of a lot of the karma coming from the Orion and Dracos wars, and the themes and topics of that we're collectively still working through as well. And there are so many different examples in my chart, but one of the things that I found was interesting is, after my spiritual awakening, I was very afraid. I had this thing where I was like, I promise I'm not crazy. I promise I'm not crazy. And I felt very guarded to use my abilities. And what was interesting is going back in my galactic astrology and my Akashic records, there was a life that I had in which I was very intuitive, a high vibrational being that was captured by the Dracos and ended up being used as a tool because they kind of had language in which it's like, do this and your people will be safe, and I ended up being used in psychic warfare. And so what's interesting is when you look at my chart in galactic astrology, the placement that ties to this story is in the 11th house, which is connected to the community. And so it caused me to shift my perspective. I'm not just, this odd or unique individual that's intuitive and am I crazy or not, but I'm actually paying a karmic debt to tap into my gifts and use them for the gift of positive influence collectively instead of negative.
Mm.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. How about you? Have you had, I'm really interested in, I believe you have some stories regarding experiences where you've had contact
Yeah,
or,
multiple.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm like, I want to hear them all, but no.
Okay. Okay, well,
Yeah, tell me more about that.
well,
I'm
look,
so curious.
I'll talk about the most recent one. So this only happened about 3 weeks ago, and my wife and I are standing on the balcony at night time, and the sun's just gone down, and we're looking up at the stars, and it's really beautiful and everything. And I start to point out the satellites, which are just going across the sky, and they're really nice and calm. And they just, satellites move in a very nice, calm, slow sort of pattern. And then my wife says, "Look at that one." And this one's actually going in an opposite direction. The other ones, it's actually going really fast. And I said, "That's not a satellite this time." And she's watching it and she goes, "Look, it's turning." And it turned and went above our house. And I was like, "Wow." I said, "That's your first UFO." That's the
Oh my
and she's
gosh.
like, "Wow, I've seen one." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what happens." And sometimes it's extremely mundane like that, just a little thing in the sky that just goes across. But that was the first time I'd seen one in that sort of framework. And then going back further, about 3 months ago, I was walking out to my car early in the morning to go to my other workplace, and I'm standing there, and then one comes over from the west, and it's a super bright, looks like a little sun going across the
Yeah.
sky, and it's completely silent, and it moves in a beautiful arc towards the north. And I'm like, there's another one,
Yeah.
and that's two just on the mountain that we live at now. But then other times I've had contact experiences with spirits and also with alien entities too. Do you want to hear about those?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So spirit contact for me is pretty much an everyday sort of thing. So it's sort of normalized.
Yeah.
And as a part of that, I do sort of like ritual works every day where I uh, contact the planets
I love it.
and as an honoring sort of process, because I mean
Mhm.
we're under the rays of all of the astrology all the time. So if you get yourself into a position where you are uh, what would you say? It's like in accord with what is happening, then
Yeah.
less drama happens, from my
Hmm.
experience. And an example of drama is like, for example, Rahu, as a star, really was kicking me really hard, and I didn't even think of it. But for almost 1.5 years there, anything that I invested in was a disaster, like a real disaster. It's like, what's going on here, And once I figured it out, I was like, oh, that's Rahu. He's just doing what Rahu does. And so I did some chanting to forge a connection with Rahu and settle down and temper that, so then I wouldn't have as much, and that settled down a lot of things. So these connections to spirits and entities, I think are normal as a part of our lives.
Yeah.
And when you are in accord with the universe, then less of the crazy happens, to put it plainly.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
alien contact. I was working as a programmer in the distribution industry, and I was called in to work on a contract as a person writing artificial intelligence to assist databases to connect between companies. So it was a large
Oh.
company, but it had a lot of separate sites that have had organically um, spawned over time, but they all had separate databases, and my business partner and my job was to connect them all. And the easiest way we found for that was to actually write a probability-based AI, which would then talk to the databases. So then what would happen is it'd say, okay, this field means this field means that, and connect to the main database and make it all work out, but then throw out an exception report. So that would say, we don't know where this goes. But a lot of the times it would get everything right pretty much the first time. And we developed that over time. But as we were working on this project, um, because it was such an extreme project and we'd work many, many hours for long periods of time, and it was extremely stressful. And I was medicating using plant um, medicine, which
Hmm.
wasn't good for me at the time. But that opened me up in certain ways in that I did not
Yeah.
know or expect. And as a part of my what would you call it, boundary setting sort of work, I would actually occasionally go see a psychic and just
Hmm.
to say, okay, because everything's going crazy and everything's too intense, I'd go and see a psychic and say, what's going on? And the psychic would sit there and then talk me through it. And I was seeing a psychic called Francesca at Bondi Markets and I think they used to be on Saturdays. And I'd get down there on my motorbike and go and see Francesca, and she was great. And one time I sat down with her, and she was looking at me and going, "What's going on here? There's all this stuff flying around." And I said, "I don't know. What do you mean?" She goes, "There's all these entities flying around, and I don't know what they want with you, but they really want you to do something. And I've got to say, honestly, I don't think it's good for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "Okay." So she said, "I can see you doing this." And I said, "Yeah, that's my work."
Mm.
And she said, "Look, I've got to tell you plainly that the people you're working with don't know it, but they're also being influenced by an alien race that actually wants to give birth to a consciousness through the work that you're doing."
Mm.
And she didn't
Hmm.
know that I was coding or anything like that, but that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
And in no uncertain terms, other entities then approached me and said, "This is not meant to be born now. And if you
Mm.
keep on going, we're going to take you out." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." And and I said, "Oh, how do I know that you're even real and I'm not just, um,
Yeah.
yeah, believing
Yeah.
that this?" Well, they proved themselves to be real by revealing themselves over time, and I had direct
Yeah.
contact with them, and they were. At first, I thought there were beings in like another planet far, far away that were coming to me. They said, no, 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 we're here all the time, and we're in a
Yeah.
parallel universe right next to you, and we see everything and know everything, and we
Wow.
do, influence reality, and we'll show you. And one evening they popped through the walls and in front of me on everywhere, and I was totally amazed. And they looked like, I mean, to be honest, they looked like little elves, and
Okay.
it was severely bizarre. But yeah, I learned a lot about myself by going down that path. But I also learned that I had sold out of my humanity and my service to others, I would say, because I wasn't serving humanity at that stage. I felt like, and I did realize in time that what I was doing was completely not good. I ended up quitting that job and signing over the rights to the other people, and yeah, to say that it was relief was, an understatement. It was good to get away from it, and I had to recover like my emotions, because writing in that sort of code for such a long time, you lose all your
Yeah.
emotions and you lose your connection to
Wow.
humanity. And I happened to catch up with some friends up in northern New South Wales and stay with them for a while. And over a period of time, living in the forest and being in nature turned me back around
Mm.
and made me realize that that wasn't the right way. Mm.
Mm, what a story. What a story. I that's yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. Now, I'm curious because so I have, like I said, I've uncovered that I have had abduction experiences, which makes sense
Yeah.
because I have this chunk of time missing in my childhood, and I always assumed it was just because of trauma. But what's interesting is, I know my mom would tell stories how I was, at a young age, and, living in a time where, you lock your doors and stuff. And they found me outside in the snow. And my mom, being religious even, would share this story about how they were just like, how did she get outside, like, how did this even happen? And so there was a period of my life between ages 4 to 13 that I've unlocked that, I was abducted 3 times, and I have lots of detail that's been shared with me. But when I asked if it would be of my highest good to unlock those memories or gain access to that, I've kind of been denied that. But I have recently had, I would say, very incredible spiritual experiences where I do feel like I will be having a contact experience. But not only that, but I feel like um, this is just something that I'm perceiving. I feel like in the next couple years that we're probably going to see a significant increase in individuals experiencing contact experience that will ultimately lead up to, a more, obvious open. But I'm kind of feeling in that these contact experiences, kind of like, it almost feels like invitations have been sent out to people that, are good candidates for this. And I almost feel like even the individual contacts will be so obvious, like, fifth kind of talk, contacts that will happen so frequently across that it'll be kind of impossible to ignore.
Mm.
And then ultimately lead to, a greater contact experience. And that we're being prepared for this, because I do feel like, we're being, that is part of our evolution of growth. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that sort of thing? Do you feel that resonates?
Yeah, it does. And when you were talking about it just then, I was thinking, okay, that makes a lot of sense. There could be, I mean, it does seem like we're edging towards like mass change, and that mass change would, I think, because of the nature of it, open people up to having more contact with spirits and the dead, and subsequently, if people are open to it, then maybe even alien type experience as well. Extraterrestrial. I'm not even sure if extraterrestrials are extraterrestrials. I just want to say that too, because
Yeah, no, I hear you.
yeah, because from my own one experiences, I should say, they weren't from anywhere else. They were here already, and it was a matter of me being more open to be able to see them and have contact with them. So I'm pretty much of the understanding that, if the universe is a spectrum of experience, from absolute pure spirit all the way down into really solid dense materialism, that we're in the very small point of that one end of that spectrum, which is, where you get to experience materialism and everything. And then spirit, the other spirit part, is a larger part that we just aren't tuned into. And I think that a rebalancing of the universe is taking place, and we're a part of it. And we all read the travel brochure for this life before we came here and said, well, that's cool, that's going to be a good ride, let's go. And
I
so
love it.
we're all going to be here for it, and
Yeah.
whether we want to or not at this stage, but it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
over the next probably 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of interesting things. And yeah, just realize it's a ride. Enjoy the ride. Yeah,
I
things
love
get a
it.
bit weird.
I love the travel brochure. Yeah, that's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I can just imagine that, like, when you're on the other side, you've relaxed for a few centuries after the last intense life, and then there's travel brochures on a table, and you pick one up and you go, and you're reading it, and you're like, oh, that looks good. And as soon as you say it looks good, you're down. You're actually just birthed. You're like, oh, what?
Yeah. Too late.
Too late.
Yeah.
It's like an agreement, and all of a sudden you're here again, and your mind's erased, but you've got this thing. It's like, why? What did I agree to this time? Yeah, yeah, but it's all
Oh my
experience. It's all
gosh.
good.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm. So now, with the galactic astrology, the last time that we talked, you actually sent me through my galactic astrology chart, and I've looked it over, and to be honest, I can't make heads or tails of it. So
Okay, I couldn't remember. I know I was like just getting started and so
yeah,
excited about my journey, and I wasn't sure. So you've looked it over,
I've looked it
and
over, but because it's completely different to other ways of looking at astrology, I'm like, I don't know why that's
yes,
important, because it's got like
yeah,
references to um, galactic references, and then different planets and their positions. When it's
yeah.
in relation to, is it in relation to the galactic center? I mean, how does it actually get cast?
Oh goodness. Yeah. So there is like actual astrology markers for the galactic center and all the other ones in there, the super galactic center, the attractor. So in galactic astrology, these are portals. And
Ah,
so, so like for example, my soul origins, I know since even before galactic astrology, which I feel are affirmed through my galactic astrology chart. But my soul origins early on was explained to me that I'm what is called a blueprinter. And there's not much dialogue out there about what the blueprinters are. But I had someone say, "You're a blueprinter. Go get Dolores Cannon's book, Keeper of the Garden, and Zachariah Stitchin's 12th Planet. Read about that stuff." And she sent me a couple links. Honestly, I didn't do anything with it. I wasn't, I wasn't ready to entertain. I mean, I'm just I'm
Just
like, I'm
starting out on
starting,
this.
I'm handling astrology. Don't go throwing alien stuff at me. So really it's been a 2 year process to get where I am here. And even that, I told my husband, I was like, all right, okay, I'm gonna end up being the alien lady. Okay, I guess let's bring it on. And so I had, multiple readers tell me this until finally I looked it up. So because the blueprinters were a part of, the you could say some of the larger initial fragmentations of source before we got, so fragmented down to, the I, sort of the first initial larger fragmentations kind of had, I believe, a more of a group consciousness. And so because of this, there's no star, connection to it. So you can say, yes, we can identify as a star seed, but for this particular energy, there was no particular star associated. So, but it's notated in my chart through key placements of entry point through portal. So anytime you see a nebula or galactic astrology points, these are considered portals.
Oh,
And so, yeah, yeah, yeah. And
wow.
then, just in general, when you're looking at your chart, your most relevant influences are going to be connected to your sun, moon, and rising. So, like if you were to say, for example, you find Pleiades there, then you could say that Pleiades is strongly influencing you in this current lifetime. Also, your North Node is similar to energies that are really guiding you this lifetime. The older, richer storylines come down to Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. And so if you have any conjunct or oppositions there, usually these would be areas where it's possible that you had incarnations there. And some of the earlier experiences your soul's journey had.
Wow, okay. What would a opposite supergalactic center, opposite square galactic center mean in the 10th house for your North Node?
Okay, 10th house. You have a 10th house North Node.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so wonderful. That
Okay.
is so, yeah.
How does that
Have
play out?
you heard anything about that?
No.
No. Okay. So your 10th house, oh my gosh, like I'm having so many thoughts at once. Sorry. So
That's
wonder
right.
you have all these contact experiences.
Ah.
So first off, is that your 10th house is considered like the highest peak of, it's called a career house, but it can be public reputation, the highest point of you. It can also associate with like whoever was the most masculine parental figure. So it can influence like the father, but it's generally this energy that it's like the highest point of the career. For example, the second house is kind of career related to how you bring in money. The sixth is how you serve others or they serve you. The 10th is like you as the CEO, you can say, or the face of your peak of your life purpose, things like that. And the North Node is where we're meant to gravitate towards in life. So we can look at it as at the beginning of our incarnation, the South Node is what's comfortable, what's familiar, what we've kind of already, learned and past lessons, but in this life, we want to gravitate away from that and towards that North Node. And so for those placements, that says to me that your role, your significance, that's interesting. You talked about that galactic, galactic, did you say center? It
It's
was,
super galactic center opposite square galactic center.
okay. So there is, this says to me that you're someone that you do have access to those higher those experiences, that
All right.
you're kind of, you're someone. And also this can have a quality to where it is very an individual that can be magnetic. Now the wherever the other side of that would be, wherever it's conjunct with it being opposite, this can have an energy that maybe perhaps early in life, um you know it could be something that you had to, because it's opposite, it could be something that this is a quality that you have, but you may have been hesitant or not sure in earlier stages of life, where how you felt about these
Oh, yeah.
experiences or abilities, but so it's like, okay, I know I can do these things, but but
Mm.
how awesome that you have your podcast, and here you are. You're
Yeah.
you're raising awareness to these things for not just necessarily one, concept or theory, but for like the
All of it.
universe.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I mean, I've got to say that partially the podcast is like a selfish sort of act in that I like to get to talk to people about all this really cool stuff. But the
Yeah.
other side of it is too is the service to others, because what happens is other people get to hear what's actually possible and what's out there
Yeah.
and connect with that. And I feel what
And that
you
it's okay. And
and
that
that
it's
it's
okay.
okay. Exactly, it's
Mm-hmm.
totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Thank you for that. Because I just pointed, like, I just spotted it there. I was like, I don't know what that means, but it makes me really curious. So, yeah, thank you.
That's
So,
why you're being contacted at the age of 5.
yeah,
We're
it
like, we're
makes
going to
sense.
start you early.
So, Cassandra, how do you actually aspire to inspire and uplift individuals through your story and the work that you do and authentic expression?
Yeah. So, the thing is this is I feel like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Law of One, but it was a channeled text. And there was one thing that really stuck in, with me about this. And in the book of the Law of One, they talk about teach, learn. And basically, that we are all teachers and we're all learners. And that when we go through something, if we're not sharing it or talking about it or expressing those stories, that's kind of, that information is kind of lost. And I do believe that, you know part of this human experience is we want to understand and we want to connect and we want to relate. When I was going through my earlier journey, with religion, the religious trauma I went through, there weren't really any resources. I wanted to find things that said, this is okay that you're feeling like your podcast, sharing these things. This is okay. This is, I love the title, and the whole intention you have behind your podcast. And it is that message that it's like by talking about it, the, unusual becomes more normalized and
Yes.
discussed, and that provides comfort and that provides knowledge and growth and evolution. And so, I find that by talking about, taking what was challenging, and difficult, and coming through the other side, healing, evolving, growing out, this is alchemy. That these experiences, these stories can be shared to empower and uplift, and help others feel, seen and heard. And I am very much, most of the work that I do, whether that be human design, gene keys, galactic astrology, the intention is to know thyself. Because when we can know ourselves and feel like we have permission to embody our authentic selves, then all of the other, some of the, the other garbage just kind of melts away. We're no longer jealous of somebody else because we feel supported. We
Mm.
feel like we have the right to be in this space and that we are connected to source. We're not as angry because we understand how we feel, why we feel the way we feel, and are able to provide those supports and those tools for ourselves, because at the end of the day, our society looks externally so much, for the validation, for the acceptance, the approval, but that has to be found here. And until we can do that, then we're going to be constantly mixed up in this matrix game of polarity that we're playing, where it's like, well, she said, he said, well, they shouldn't have done that. That hurt my feelings. Well, understand your feelings, understand, I'm not saying let's not spiritually bypass everything, but let's have the curiosity to think, okay, they hurt me. I wonder why that happened. And to explore how we can start shifting that narrative internally. And so everything I talk about, and all of the modalities I share with the intention to know yourself, to know the journeys you're here to go on, and give yourself permission to be your individual self, your authentic expression.
Brilliant. That's excellent. So
Thank you.
you in your podcast, what sort of topics do you cover, and what's it about?
Um, Pretty much everything we just talked about, all of these things.
Cool.
These are all things I like to talk about, hence the name of my podcast. And so, yes, astrology, human design, gene keys. Coming up for 2024, I have set the intention, as I shared before we hit record, that I am like putting both feet in, and I'm talking more about these experiences and things as it relates to topics that, I have felt resistance around, aliens and light language and channeling and, alien species, because I do think it is important to talk about it, because I feel like there is this need to raise awareness presently, to familiarize ourselves a little bit more with some of these, concepts and terms, for what the future has in store.
Brilliant. Excellent. Sounds like you're doing some really big work there, and yeah, that's cool. How can people find your podcast or find you, and maybe come and see you for a galactic astrology reading?
Yeah. So, the easiest way would be my website, which is my name, Cassandra Deann, DEANN.com. I do have on there all the information, about the different things I'm interested in and do. My podcast link is there, but I'm also on all the different platforms for podcasts, such as Apple and Spotify and Pandora, all of that. So yeah, my podcast is Things I Talk About with Cassandra Deann. So
Cool. Excellent. So I think we're at the end of the podcast right now, unless you've got another question for me.
well, I'll definitely include the link to your podcast for
Thank you.
sure. And yeah, I'm curious, what would be your last words of wisdom that you would kind of share related to some of these things we've talked about today, and,
Mm.
shifts and perspectives.
Okay, so I would say this. Okay, this is sort of like a distilled down of what we've talked about today. But I
Yeah.
would say, if you're going along in life right now and you're seeing a lot of tension and drama and everything around you, just wade your way through it, because a lot of it isn't you, and you have your own life to experience, and it's not always something that you need to pick up as well. So, yeah, maybe take some time off from social media and the news, and get into nature around, and just ground yourself. Ground yourself. Take some time out for you. I mean, we're all rushed all the time nowadays, and and our devices are basically attention seeking all the time. So yeah, turn them off. Have some time and some space for you and your family and your loved ones, and yeah, and love yourself more.
Ah, I love that. That's so beautiful. And I love, the grounding. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
And
we
you're
need
in the
grounding.
mountains, right? You
Yeah,
said oh,
well, it's a hill in Australia, but we call it a mountain. So
yeah. Well, I'm in Florida, so anything's got more landscape than we do.
yeah, yeah. Nice, nice. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Cassandra, and
You
thank you so much
too.
for your time. And
Yeah, you as
yeah,
well.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right, we'll say bye for
Awesome.
now.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, the changes that Cassandra has gone undergone since the last time we talked. I mean, the last time we talked was probably nearly 1.5 months ago, and I didn't know that she was only just scraping the edges of her understanding of galactic astrology. So to talk to her today, and the amount of amazing confidence and vibrance that was coming through in her personality was really, really good. And I really appreciated the sharing that she gave with us today on the show, and the questions that she asked me that I got to share back with. So if you've enjoyed the show, please like the show. And if you're on YouTube, press the subscribe button and like and share it to everyone that you know in the universe, even all the alien friends that you have. I know you've got some. I do too. And yeah, hopefully you come back and to the next show. It's I'm doing bi-weekly releases now. The reason being is that so many people want to record and they've got so much really good information, and I really look forward to sharing that. So thank you so much for listening, and until next show, bye for now.